All right, I'll hand over to you, Chair, to begin the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We are going to, it seems as though we have a quorum this evening. So we will begin the Citizen Police Review Commission meeting on February 3rd, 2021. It's currently 6:36 p.m. If I can have someone read the executive order issued by the governor. Not all at once. Anyone?
Oh, I can read it. As a result of an executive order issued by Governor J.B. Pritzker suspending in-person attendance requirements for public meetings, City Council members and city staff will be participating in this meeting remotely. Due to public health concerns, residents may provide public comment virtually at the meeting or in writing.
Thank you for that, Nika. We first thing on our, so if I would like to first thing on our agenda, we have the approval of meetings for the last meeting of January 6, 2021. If I can have a motion to approve the meetings of January 6, 2021, that'd be great.
I move to approve the minutes from January 6th.
If I can have a second.
Second.
All approved, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All approved, say, those not approving, say nay. Okay, having no nays, we will approve the meetings of January 6, 2021. At this time, do we have any, we're gonna move on down the agenda to any sort of public comment. I don't see any here on the agenda, but okay. So having no public comment, we'll move on to our new business. Having no.
I'm sorry, Chair, point of order. I do see a guest in the meeting. I just want to make sure that guest did not want to speak because I did not.
Nope, I don't have any comment.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I just want to make sure you were acknowledged.
You're a dear, thanks.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for joining us, Karen. So we'll move on to our new business. We, having no cases to review, that's, we will move on to the training for this month. That being the case, I am going to turn this over to Mr. Glue at the side.
Kimberly, are you able to pull up the presentation? Okay. Please let me know if I get a little choppy or broken up. I did just have something flash across my screen saying my internet was unstable. I don't know why. But if something comes up and I need to switch devices, please let me know. So hopefully that was just a hiccup. So this is going to be our February training discussion. And our topics this month are going to be body-worn cameras and complaint intake. Both of these topics can get pretty expansive. We're going to hit some bullet points that I think that are most important for this committee. But in the future, if we need to expand out that conversation or get more information, or if you have questions at the end of this, I'll get back to you with some answers. So with that, we will get started. So I want to talk first about body-worn cameras. And there are some nuances in the law, but I think that what I have here is going to cover about 90% plus of body-worn camera on a day in and day out basis. And it requires officers to have the camera turned on when responding to calls for service or engaged in any law enforcement related encounter or activity while on duty. So officers, like I said, when they're going to a call, they're on a call, they're doing law enforcement related activity, police type stuff, their body-worn camera is to be on. I don't have it in here, but also there's a requirement that body-worn cameras buffer for 30 seconds. So when an officer turns the camera on, and there's a number of things that will turn a camera on. If you turn on your emergency lights, it'll turn on the camera. It'll record at least the video for 30 seconds prior to the camera getting activated. So there are some exceptions to recording. The first is a victim or a witness requests the camera be turned off. The second is interacting with confidential informants. And another one is while engaged in community caretaking functions. Community caretaking function might be on a foot patrol at a festival. It might be standing a perimeter at a traffic accident, something of that nature. But even in those situations, if an officer moves out of the community caretaking function and anytime moves into the interaction of a law enforcement nature or responds to an emergency situation, or has contact with somebody that starts to take on a potentially adversarial tone, they're to activate that body-worn camera. Something that's come up, it may come up with this committee, is the storage of body-worn camera footage. Body-worn camera footage is retained for 90 days unless one of the following circumstances applies. A complaint has been filed. So if a complaint is filed, the body-worn camera footage related to that complaint is preserved. There's a use of force related to that footage. And that use of force also includes anything up to the discharge of a firearm. A death or great bodily harm occurred to a person on that recording. So while that body-worn camera footage is recording and somebody has great bodily harm or dies, and that could be not just a police use of force, that could be accidental, that could also be medical, so on and so forth, that camera would be preserved. A detention or an arrest. If somebody's arrested, that body-worn camera footage is preserved. It does exclude, however, minor traffic and business offenses. So we don't preserve, let's say, all the traffic stops we do that are very minor in nature, no enforcement action, no arrest. Those would be deleted after 90 days unless something else kicked in, like a complaint.
Commander Gu, we have a question.
Sure.
Raised hand.
Thank you. You going back to the first slide, you said that the body-worn camera comes on with the buffer, 30-second buffer,
Mhm.
even when the emergency lights are activated. So the body-worn camera and the emergency lights are connected.
Yeah, so I can't specifically describe the technology, and I could if given, I can find out. But if I'm in a squad car and my body-worn camera's on, and it's in that basically that DVR mode of it's kind of recording all the time, 30 seconds back. If I turn on the emergency lights in my car, it'll turn that body-worn camera on without me specifically interacting with the body-worn camera. If another squad car turns its emergency lights on within a certain distance of my body-worn camera, the lights will turn on. So what's happening now, and what will probably, like what the evolution, as the technology evolves, they're going to want to put certain things in that are going to turn that body-worn camera on without the officer interacting with it. In the future, probably there'll be smart holsters that if a officer's firearm comes out, if an officer gets in a situation where he or she has to act immediately and pull their firearm out, that body-worn camera is going to turn on. Like right now, our tasers, if somebody activates a taser, every body-worn camera within a certain radius, that taser will turn on.
So it's almost like a Bluetooth type technology.
Yeah, it's a Bluetooth technology. So, because tasers and the body-worn camera are made by the same manufacturer, the tasers will talk to the body-worn camera. If an officer gets in a use of force situation, that's a very abrupt situation, something, I don't want to say ambush, but has to act immediately. Once the taser comes out, the taser's in the on position, that body-worn camera comes on. And we'll see, I think we'll see as time goes on, we'll see more of those, let's say passive activations where it's, your firearm comes out, you're doing certain things which your body worn camera should come on, it's going to turn it on without you actually taking it and touching it and turning it on manually. So going back to the storage of the body worn camera footage, if an officer is being investigated for misconduct, he or she's body worn camera footage will be preserved outside the 90 days. And then the last one, which is kind of a catch-all, is if a supervisor, a prosecutor, a defendant, or the court determines the video has evidentiary value, it will be preserved. Now, if a prosecutor, a defendant, or the court is involved, chances are that video has already been preserved. But there might be an incident that we have where a supervisor like myself might be like, hey, it doesn't fit necessarily all these other criteria, but based on the totality of circumstances, that body worn camera needs to be preserved. So I'm going to touch on body worn camera and officer discipline. Body worn cameras are used to discipline officers under the following circumstances. The first two are kind of a little bit more specific, and the last two are a little bit more, I would say, a broader umbrella. So if there's a complaint of misconduct, the body worn camera footage can be used to discipline an officer. So if there's a complaint, we review the body worn camera, there's a policy violation revealed, the officer's going to be disciplined. Use of force incident, part of reviewing use of forces, we review the body worn camera footage. Again, if there's a policy failure, non-compliance with policy, that'll be met with discipline. Here's one that's a pretty broad and is going to capture a lot of stuff, a lot of police activity. The encounter and captured could result in a formal investigation under the Uniformed Peace Officers Disciplinary Act. So if a body worn camera catches a violation that falls underneath that, and it's not a use of force and it's not a complaint of misconduct, the body worn camera footage can be used for discipline. And then lastly, the corroboration of other evidence of misconduct being used as part of a larger investigation. And I'm going to say that those 4 bullet points are going to cover pretty much everything that we do.
Question, I'm sorry.
Sure.
There is a question. Karen, do you want to make mention of this?
Sure. Hey, Commander Glue, I
Hey,
was
Karen.
wondering, how you doing?
Good.
I was wondering how the following scenario would be avoided.
Okay.
I know that the policy for citizen complaints permit them for up to 2 years,
Mhm.
but by then it seems like most of the footage would have been deleted, right? After 90 days, if there was no other issue?
If there was no other issue, yeah. So let's say, if I could kind of maybe take your words a little bit, and basically, there's no reason to tag the video or preserve it.
Right.
180 days later, or 6 months later, a year later, somebody comes back and says, "Hey, I have a complaint about this contact." Yeah, unfortunately, that video would not be there. If it's related to an arrest and somebody comes back with a complaint, the video would be there. But yes, as you laid it out, the likelihood is the video would not be there.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured.
So, Chief, Commander, is a question I have for you, because this is something that I actually had the same conversation with Sergeant, I keep wanting to say Aaron, but I don't want to, was that our policy of 2 years was in place before body-worn cameras was even something that we were able to have in place. So like the 90 days is coming from state statute, or is that coming, that's not coming from the city?
No.
So is that correct?
Yeah, the 90 days is from state statute, and actually something I'm going to touch on a little bit is about our complaint intake process and the length of time. So, and actually some legislation that's also coming up. So it's just how Kimberly said, most agencies only take complaints for 6 months. We take complaints for up to 2 years. The body-worn camera policy, the law, the act is a standalone act separate from the investigation and internal complaint or investigation of complaints, and it's 90 days. It would come for us to save all video or agencies to save all video for that length of time, 2 years, would be extremely expensive. It would take I would say an insane amount of storage. One of the big obstacles for implementing body-worn camera programs has not been the technology, the body-worn camera itself. It's cost-effective storage. And that was actually our last kind of hurdle to get over, is how do we manage storage? And that's what I think was one of the big selling points of the vendor that we went with. So I think the next slide is about our program specifically a little bit. So our pilot program for body-worn cameras started in 2017 with a handful of officers using them. And then we went to full implementation in 2018. This program is a $1 million plus commitment by the city of Evanston, the Evanston Police Department, to transparency and best practices. There is some grant money that helped offset the cost, but the cost to the city was, I believe, in the neighborhood of $1 million plus. Our body-worn camera policy is from Lexipol, which is where we get our suite of policies. It's reviewed by law, and our policy is compliant with the Body-Worn Camera Act. And I do want to add that Evanston PD is more proactive than required by law at alerting people that we come in contact with that they're being recorded. So let's talk about, we move on to complaint intake. The Evanston Police Department will take a complaint for 2 years after an incident. I mentioned earlier that kind of the standard practice is 6 months, but for us it's 2 years, and it's been 2 years for as long as I can remember. We will investigate anonymous complaints, and body-worn camera footage is important in the investigation of anonymous complaints. I would say that it's game-changing when it comes to investigating an anonymous complaint, because if we have an anonymous complaint that gives us the information as far as, you know, when the complaint or the event that brought forth the complaint occurred, our witness is the body-worn camera footage, which would usually be from multiple officers. We investigated anonymous complaints before, but the body-worn camera footage makes that, I would say, facilitates the effectiveness of an anonymous complaint. And the Evanston Police Department has investigated complaints not supported by affidavit, sworn affidavit. As it stands now, and we're going to talk about this in the next slide, this is about to change. Our CRs come supported by an affidavit. Other police departments will not take a complaint unless it's supported by a signed affidavit by the complainant. That is not how we operate. That's not what we do. And then even the chief of police can sign as a complainant in certain instances. So the chief will become aware of a situation, somebody is uncooperative, we'll review it, and the chief can actually become the complainant against the officer in their activities. So I want to talk about the House bill that's supposed to be signed or going to be signed by Governor Pritzker. And
Yes.
a lot of it goes into effect July 1st. Some of it's spread out over a couple of years, some of the different aspects of it. But there's a couple changes there. that I think that we need to be aware of for this commission. And that is officers do not have to be informed of the names of complainants prior to administrative proceeding. I think that this will go, for people that are aware of this, this would go, I would say, to their peace of mind that they can make a complaint and not have a fear of retaliation. So that complaint can be investigated without the officer knowing who made it. And like I said, I think that that would ease some concerns about retaliation if somebody feels that that's a possibility. Or like I said, just a concern and something for their comfort level. And there will no longer be a requirement, the person filing a complaint, to have the complaint supported by an affidavit. That will be the case for all law enforcement agencies in the state of Illinois, not just Evanston. We'll touch on, like, if there's and this does not apply to us, you may see something about in this law that removes it from collective bargaining by, I believe, 2023. The sworn affidavit part of complaint process is not in a collective bargaining agreement in Evanston. And again, it has not been our practice anyway. So we're going to go to body-worn camera footage and complaint investigation. They talked about earlier, body-worn camera footage facilitates the investigation of anonymous complaints. Before, where somebody would make an anonymous complaint, we may have a report to view or maybe even some in-car camera. But now we have basically an officer or officer's perspective from their body-worn camera capturing it. So the body-worn camera is a witness for the complaint. Body-worn camera footage has become an essential part of us investigating internal complaints and internal investigations. Something I want to touch on here that I think is very important for the commission is body-worn camera footage assists anybody who's reviewing an investigation, whether it's a commission, whether it's myself or Sergeant Warnick investigating, or supervisors reviewing the investigation, making recommendations. It captures tone and context that's not captured in print. So it's going to capture tone and context that's doesn't come through in a summary. In reviewing these investigations, it is important that we review the body-worn camera footage. And going forward, we are requesting the commission review the body-worn camera footage when reviewing, making their review to make sure that things are thorough and prior to sending back an investigation. I have asked the person who redacts our videos to start, since we are caught up and we can anticipate a couple complaints a month, that we make this a part. I encourage the commission to review every body-worn camera video or body-worn camera footage for every investigation you review. It's going to lead to a thorough review on your part, and it's going to add context and information to that situation that you wouldn't otherwise have. But again, seeing that such a large part of the investigation, the summaries are incomplete without it. So with that wraps up what we wanted to touch on tonight and moves us on to the questions, insights, conversation part of tonight's training discussion.
I had a question on that last piece on the commission review of the footage. Is the suggestion or recommendation that we review them prior to the meeting, or we review them as a committee on the night of the meeting?
Kimberly, we have not reviewed any video since I've been with you. Kimberly, has there been any video reviewed yet?
So per my understanding, the review will occur at the meeting as part of the exec session. But what we've done in the past, we've done it both ways. We've done the exec session, and then we also carved out time where you all were able to view the videos. Because of how the videos are on, the police has to have access to it. It's not something that we're able, unless it's audio, be able to post in our Google folder. So what you all will have to do is decide if you want to have it so where you can view it before the meeting, or it will be reviewed during exec session during the meeting. So I think that would be something we would need some direction from you all.
Like I said, myself, I'm for facilitating whatever within the ordinance. We know where the ordinance and what's convenient for the commission comes together, and what Kimberly approves or says, hey, that's good. My goal is that you guys are reviewing, have the opportunity to review this footage, because there's gonna be times that you're gonna look, and I'll be honest, you're gonna look at a summary sometimes and go, you know, that's relatively uncomplicated. I think it's okay. And then you might watch the video and go, you know what, I do have a problem with this. And vice versa. I just think I have concerns that the review without that body worn camera footage, especially when it's such a large part of our investigation, the review is incomplete.
Makes sense.
And I said, I think the more, I just think the commission is going to serve its purpose more effectively and from a more informed point of view and with more information, with that being part of our practice. Sorry, that sounds.
I apologize for being late. I just got caught up on another call. Couldn't get
I
off.
understand.
So right now, you're talking in terms of what?
Yeah.
Of us seeing the video footage. That are you encouraging us to
Yes.
make sure that we do look at it, that we can see things differently than, you know, just from the written report?
Yeah, I'm definitely encouraging that. And like I said, I think I was talking to the person who does our redactions earlier. It is, like I will say that there's a time commitment to make this available and make sure that it's there. But I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. You know, we would not necessarily want to, and again, we want to, we don't want to make it unwielding and an obstacle, right? I would think that we would probably kind of start with, here's the body worn camera footage from the officer who's the source of the complaint. And we would make that available. And the body worn camera footage is going to capture most of the incident, so you can review that. There are times that, depending on the complaint and the situation, there could be hours of body worn camera footage of that incident. And I think that there's probably a diminishing return at some point where we can probably make good use of time and good use of resources to maximize the results. So yes, I said earlier, like, I highly recommend it because it is such a big part of our investigation and our review process that I think it's imperative for your review process as well. Thank you. And Rick, I have some information specifically for you as a follow-up from last month when we wrap this up.
Okay.
Okay.
I look forward to that.
But, I mean, it's not exciting. I just told you I would verify all the numbers that I provided last month.
Yeah.
And I did verify them, and those were accurate. So.
All right, good. I ask the same question every meeting.
Yeah.
All right, good.
So with that, thank you very much, Commander Glue. With that being said, you all are here on Thursday. So I think that just from the standpoint of your time and, you know, trying to fit schedules so people have the time to review, what we could do is switch the order of the meeting where we go into exec session first. So you have time to review the video and then come out, and then you guys can walk through the cases. Now, if there's some video where there might need some more or need additional time, I think what we can do is play that by ear, working with Sergeant Warnick to maybe make those available prior to the meeting, where those are more complicated. I think the ones where you all kind of like read through them and kind of understand the context, those might go quicker than the ones where I think one you had the opportunity to review prior to the meeting, and then we reviewed it again in the meeting as well. So you all had a chance to see it together. So that's something this is something that's evolving. I think this observation made by Commander Glue is a great point. If we're saying that you all are doing a thorough review, the body camera is part of that, or any other visual audio is part of that review. And so we're just going to keep evolving over time as we start to see patterns or some trends or things that you may come across that you may want us to address. So this is just part of that evolution. And then we can always, redress it again. If we see that this is not really working well, we can figure out a better option for how the review can occur. So that way your time is used wisely, and but your input will be able to definitely be valued to our process. So it's something that we don't have to be staunch in our decision making. We can just say, let's try it out and see what works and what doesn't, and we can always adjust as needed.
So is that something that you need for us to kind of figure out now for the next video? I mean, for the next complaints that we're going to have? I don't know if we'll have any next month, but for the next complaints, or is that something you want us to kind of take up and put on the agenda for discussion at the next meeting?
So what we can do is I know that from my conversation with Sergeant Warnick, there should be one ready to come up at the next meeting. So what we can do is put an email and let you all know that it's ready to go. And if you want to have that discussion tonight, we can have it, but I want to make sure you all have a chance to prepare to review it, or we will just go into exec session at the next meeting, and then we can have a more thorough conversation about process for review for future meetings.
So I'll just give my thoughts on it, and anyone else can speak up if they like. I think for time purposes that if we have the video ahead of time, we can all review it separately. And then if we feel like, okay, well, this is a video that we need to discuss together, just like we read the complaint separately, we can review the video separately. But if we feel like this is something we need to review together, then that one particular video should be discussed in exec session, just for time that we're not reviewing all the videos if it's not necessary for our investigation or our review for the investigation.
And what we can do too is I was just thinking in my head, and this may not make sense at this moment. What we can do is create a doodle poll once I am able to talk to Sergeant Warner to find out his work schedule. And what that will allow us to do is to see what days of the week are available for most of you, or times, or if it's afternoon or evening or morning. And so that way we can have some set review dates, so we all know if we're going to have a review that, if you want to pop in for a meeting, that way you're not trying to work around everyone's schedule. We can try something like that. Let me think through this a little bit to make it a little organized, so he doesn't have to try to find 9 separate sessions for you all to be able to review the meeting, if you want to do it that way. And then, like I said, this is ever evolving. Let's try it out. Let's try it out with this next one coming up, if it's not too long, to see if you guys have a chance to review it prior to the meeting. And if you need to review it again, we'll still have it on exec session just to have it there as a placeholder, but it's not need to be, you don't need to go into it, as you know, unless you feel that a second review is needed. So we can try it, and then we can talk about it and adjust it. And that's the good thing about this. Nothing is set in stone about how your review should occur.
Okay.
A question. When you look at this commission compared to, let's just say, the last commission, what do you see as the difference? I'm hearing that, this one here is more open. This one is adding more input and video and, just better communication. I mean, is that, because I can't compare it to the last, commission, but you get a little just a understanding of how that has changed.
Sure, and I'm only doing this, I usually would never do this, but because Karen was a pivotal role in the formation of new commission, Karen, please jump in if you feel like I'm missing something. I can say that from my understanding, first of all, the previous commission wasn't really a codified committee. And what that means is that there's no governing document explaining what their role and how they're supposed to do their job, to hold accountability on both them as the commission and the city in our role. And so that was something that was addressed with the ordinance that you all are aware of. Now, as to the review, my understanding that they only received in the previous committee, and this was a change that was made at the request of the review committee that was a task force put together to review how we do our citizen reviews of police complaints. They only received the human services report. And I don't know if you've seen those, but those are the summary report. That was it. So they never had access to the redacted file to review the entire case. And the only other thing that they were able to review once it was become available were the body-worn camera footage. And that was only just recently. So for the entire tenure of that committee, for the majority of that tenure, the only thing that they had access to review was a summary report. And as you all have now come to recognize, the summary report is only just a small piece of the bigger piece of the review or of the investigation. And so that really did not give them the ability to really have a full breadth of what was the issue that was being addressed in the complaint. And so that pretty much is such a significant, I want to say, reason why this commission, we were very explicit in that you needed to have access to the file, because once you are able to see it from your own lens and not some summary report that a staff person put together, you're able to come up with your own questions that can be reviewed as you've done a couple times already. And then secondly, training. That was not something that they were given, of some form of like formal training around how we did the use of force. Today, we're talking about body-worn cameras. We might be going down some other roads of training. Ride-alongs is something that we're gonna still try to figure out how to do in this COVID world. So the things of how the interaction of how we interact with the police in that standpoint. And then lastly, any input that you all have been given to both the police department as myself about how do we engage the community in a different way. So another conversation that we will have down the road is how do we utilize you all as being a part of that communication piece, so people feel like they have trusted community members to go to, they have a complaint. I think some of the changes with the law does help. I mean, even though we already do anonymous complaints, a lot of community members don't know what that means. And so having you all filled with knowledge of understanding of this process will help us reach community members who may be a little hesitant to file a complaint, just because, as mentioned, around retaliation, or they don't feel like the process is really fair in a way that they will see any type of reform in how we interact or engage with the community. So Karen, am I missing anything else from your observation from the previous committee structure?
I think you hit a lot of the important stuff. And I just want to underline the first thing you said, and that is that there was no charter and there were no term limits. So there were people who were on that committee from day one, never went off, and were viewed their role as supporting the police department's command structure, and didn't engage in conversation about the report. And another key thing is that the reports that I've read, the summary reports, are much better than the summary reports that existed 2 years ago when I first started seeing what those summary reports look like. So the amount of information you're getting and the quality of the information you're getting is dramatically different.
Karen, thank you for helping us get to this point.
Hey, it was nothing but fun, right?
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot
Commander,
of data that was collected. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it was very thoroughly reviewed to get to this point. So
we worked hard and I'm glad to see, I'm glad to be able to hear the conversations.
so does that answer your question, Rick?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're, would that conclude the training portion of this? Is there any other discussion on that?
So I had one additional question. Going back to the point about the difference between the 90-day storage required by law and then the 2-year complaint intake statute of limitations. Is there any like information on either like the city website or the intake forms or any communication that's given to residents about the complaint process that notifies them that there's a 90-day storage limitation for the bulk of the body-worn camera footage, just so that people are aware of that fact that after 90 days, probably much of the footage, if other circumstances aren't met, would be gone. I think just kind of having that information out there might be helpful to have people, you know, follow through with their complaints quicker.
I think your point's well taken. I think that information is available. I just don't think it's available in the same place. So you can go on and, you know, you can go on and learn about the complaint process in 2 years, whatever, and you can go over here and you can see you on this link, body-worn camera footage and all that, and you're going to see 90 days. You're not going to see it in the same place. So bringing
those
that together is something that we'll look at doing. And I appreciate that, because when part of this training discussion is insight like this. So it's like we want the complaint process to be as comfortable as it can be, as informed as it can be. And I think if you look at the legislation now sitting on Pritzker's desk and you compare it to our practice, that shows that we are that much more progressive than most agencies in the state of Illinois, how we handle things. So, but this piece of, hey, let's bring this information here and connect it, only makes it better. So I will definitely make a note of that.
We're going to be changing our forms. Once the legislation is signed, we have to change our intake form. So I already made that request that language be added to the actual form that people complete, even online, and kind of highlight that so that people know, like, you can still submit your complaint, but just know that that 90-day threshold for any type of visual may not be there. And lastly, I would say that one other thing, because I didn't know about the 90-day storage and how it applied until I think 2 meetings ago, when that was brought up with why we didn't have some information. And so once that came to light, I was very much like, oh, we don't educate our public about this, they're not going to know. The sooner you file that complaint, the better it's going to be for us to ensure that we can have a very thorough investigation. And so that comes in part with what I would like to discuss with you all again, not tonight, but down the road, how we can better educate once we kind of clean up some things. So the last one, maybe we should bring back to you guys, if you haven't seen the application, or not application, but the form itself, if you have any feedback to give about the form, we are welcome to receive any feedback on that. That was something that was revamped as part of the review committee that was formed. But again, we can always, that document is not static. It can always change if we see a need for additional information that you all think is not being requested as part of the complaint. So we are here to just want to make this process as transparent and accessible to the community as possible. Someone mentioned to me about the disabled community. How are we ensuring that people who have certain disabilities, such as those who may be hearing impaired, how are we making sure they have a complaint that they are being brought in? Those who are not English speaking, especially Spanish speaking, how are we ensuring that their complaint process is being brought in? So we are trying to hear all those and make sure we address them as well.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, so we've concluded the training portion. Next thing on the agenda is we have no old business, so we'll move on to communications.
Yes. So it was brought to my attention that we do not need to continue to approve the report that goes to Human Services. What it is just documentation of your approval of those complaints moving forward. And we discussed the language. We've gotten the okay that the language we're using was satisfactory. But I want that to still be a part of the record for our committee. So I will continue to post them as part of communications. If there in the future you do see a concern or error or something that needs to be corrected, we will just correct it and we'll correct the record, but we will continue to move that forward to Human Services so that they will get those as part of the review package of those complaints.
If we so desired, could we sit in on the Human Services Committee meeting?
They go to Human Services automatically as part of.
I'm just saying, let's just say one of us wanted to sit in on a.
Oh, yes, definitely.
We don't have anything else to do but go sit in the Human Services Committee. We could.
You could. We welcome that. It's open. So if you like, I will give you the dates of those meetings.
Okay, I wouldn't mind having it. I would.
Sure.
Let's see how that process works.
If you could, you want to change places with me, and I will love to not go to these meetings. I mean, I love going, but I would love some days. Is there anything else? So if that's okay with you all, we will continue to post them as they are in the packet.
Sounds
And
good.
at the end, and what I would like to do at the end is my goal is to put this all together and to make it into an annual report. So we're collecting data so we can have some charts and then have these reports as one like resource to, so if someone ever want to come back and see what we've looked at over the course of 1 year, they can have that in one location. So that's my hope, is creating a full packet, a 12-month report that includes all of these reports.
Thank you. If we're moving on the agenda, do we have any other discussion on anything that was brought up in this meeting today? Any concerns, questions? No? Okay. Well, it seems as though we have concluded our meeting. If I can have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
I can have a second. I'm sorry.
January meeting.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Having no opposition. Having no opposition, we have adjourned our February 3rd, 2021 meeting. It was great seeing everyone. Everyone be safe and happy Black History Month.
Like you did. Come on, you down in Florida playing or what?